Hey, good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to the TCEQ Pretreatment Program Stakeholder Meeting. First, I'd just like to apologize for any confusion there may have been about the meeting time. We realized early today that the email announcement that originally went out indicated a 1 p.m. start time, but the website and agenda showed a 1:30 p.m. start time. So we sent out an additional email correcting that. But if you didn't see that in time and you've been here since 1 p.m., we appreciate your patience and apologize for the wait. While we were waiting, I was looking at the attendance list and saw a lot of names that are new to me. So for those who I've not met previously, my name is Robert Sadler. I'm the Deputy Director of TCEQ's Water Quality Division. I'm just going to start the meeting off by introducing myself, introducing the other TCEQ staff in attendance, and then I'll hand it off to Erica Crespo, the Assistant Deputy Director, who will talk more about meeting format and logistics. So I've served in the Deputy Director position since June of 2021. And prior to my time in water quality, I worked in the Office of Compliance and Enforcement for about 10 years, where I served in a number of roles in the water, air, and emergency response programs. The past 8 months has been a whirlwind, and every day continues to be a learning experience. But during my short tenure, it's been my observation that even though the division's pretreatment program occupies a relatively small space on the organizational chart, I've been involved in quite a few calls and meetings related to the pretreatment program. So it's clear to me that this is a program with a very active and engaged stakeholder community, very unique program with unique needs. And so the division felt that it was time to revive these regular stakeholder meetings and give you all in the community an opportunity, regular opportunities rather, to engage with the TCEQ pretreatment program, to hear from us and to voice your suggestions or concerns, provide us feedback. So again, we're happy to welcome you all to today's meeting. With that, I'm going to ask my TCEQ folks to turn on their cameras if they haven't already, so that I can introduce everyone who's on the call. And I'll start off with Erica Crespo, who I'm sure many of you know, Assistant Deputy Director of the Water Quality Division. Erica's waving. I think Matthew Udinenwu is on the call. I actually can't see cameras. There's too many people on the call, but Matthew, if you're on camera, give him a wave. Matthew's the section manager of the wastewater permitting section, and the pretreatment team lives within that section. Next, Colleen Cook. She is the team leader of the pretreatment team. Hi, Colleen. And now I'll go through the team. I think you're going to hear from most of these folks today. Most of the names are on the agenda. Jessica Alcacer is on the call. Hi, Jessica. Maria Benitez, are you out there? Yep. Hey, Maria. Dr. Erin Darling. I can't see her camera, but Erin, if you're there, give a wave. Hey, Erin. Bridget Malone. Hi, Bridget. And last but certainly not least, Melody Martinez. If you're on the call, give us a wave or a hey. So again, thanks to everyone for being here, TCEQ folks and external stakeholders. We really do appreciate your time, and we look forward to a productive meeting. And with that, I'll go off camera and hand it off to Erica. Thanks, Erica.
Hey, thank you so much, Robert. And again, thank you all so much for joining our stakeholder meeting. Before I turn it over to Colleen to really officially kick us off, I do want to go through a few housekeeping items, if you will. And so because this is one of the first few stakeholder meetings where we've actually designed it to be interactive with you all, we would like to let you all know that, you know, it can stretch the bandwidth if everyone has their cameras on, and especially if people are off mute. It can really disrupt the meeting. So please feel free, if you're not talking or presenting or asking a question, you're more than welcome to turn your camera off. And if you do have a question for any of the presenters prior to our Q&A portion at the very end, or also after each presentation, I do believe we're going to allow people to ask questions or provide comments. Please feel free to post any questions that you have in the chat or raise your hand once the presenter is done speaking, and we will, by all means, acknowledge you and hear you and talk with you about your question, comment, or concern. So again, just to respect the bandwidth, or to make sure that everyone in attendance can hear and participate, feel free to, turn off your camera or definitely stay on mute. But we will acknowledge you when you raise your hand, post a question, or come off mute when we get to that question and answer portion. In regards to the structure of the meeting, I kind of talked about it a little bit earlier, but we're going to follow the agenda. So, Colleen is going to kick us off and then moderate the meeting. And so I'm really excited for Colleen to, present and speak on behalf of the team as the team leader. And so after each presentation or each presenter is done speaking, there will be a mini question, answer, or comment period. So we do want for this meeting to be interactive, okay? We really want to hear from you. We want to talk with you. We want to make sure that you all can engage or discuss with us throughout this meeting. So please feel free to, raise your hand or ask us any questions during all of those mini Q&A portions after each segment, and then also at the end where it's an open discussion with everyone on the with the TCEQ staff and everyone in attendance. And, just again, please feel free to raise your hand at any point. We will definitely acknowledge you and call on you, and we will answer each question posted in the chat. And we also are acknowledging email questions. So we've gotten a few emails today at the pre-treatment team's email box. And so feel free to email questions as well. And we really want this to be a positive and productive meeting. We love meeting with you all. And so no matter what we talk about or what we share, we all have the same interest and the same goal and the same mission, and that is to implement the pretreatment program here in Texas and protect POTWs and just do what's best for citizens throughout the state. So with that said, I want to turn it over to Colleen, and Colleen, please take over and start the meeting.
Great, thank you, Erica. Good afternoon, and thank you both for that introduction and for kicking us off this afternoon. So welcome everyone to this virtual pretreatment stakeholder meeting. I'm really excited to be here today and to officially get to introduce myself to the stakeholders as the new pretreatment team leader. For those of you who don't know me, again, my name is Colleen Cook. I've been on the team for a couple of years now and have worked with many of you guys on various issues over the years, and I look forward to continuing to do so in this new role. So for this stakeholder meeting, like Erica said, we are in a virtual stance, but we do want it to be interactive. We would like to use this opportunity to share some updates since the last meeting, as well as go over a couple of announcements regarding newer items potentially impacting the pretreatment. But we also really want to hear from you. So we want to hear about concerns that you may have, issues impacting your program. But before we get started going through the agenda, I would like to quickly just reiterate a few of the housekeeping items that Robert and Erica touched on, just in order to make sure we can have as smooth a meeting as possible. Sometimes, with these big virtual meetings, there can be some hiccups. So we're trying to avoid that. But we do kindly ask that you please mute your microphone throughout the meeting unless you have raised your hand and have been called on. Same with with your video camera. Go ahead and turn it off until you're asking a question and addressing TCEQ. It'll just help with that bandwidth problem, like Erica mentioned. And then in regards to the structure of the meeting, as you can see on the agenda, we do have different TCEQ pretreatment staff presenting different topics. And after each short presentation, we will take a few minutes to address initial questions on the topic. However, if further discussion is warranted and there are quite a few questions, we don't want to slow down the momentum of the meeting. So we can table the discussion and then we'll pick it back up at the end of the meeting during the Q&A session, so we can have a little bit more of a lengthy discussion if it's warranted for any of the topics. And again, like Erica said, we want to keep this meeting positive. We want it to be constructive and leave feeling like we've, laid everything out on the table and everyone's on the same page. And of course, it's okay to disagree. We just ask that, you do so in a respectful and courteous manner. So questions, raise your hand, drop it in the chat. We'll address it after each agenda, or we'll bring it back up at the end of the Q&A session. So that's kind of how the meeting will run. We really truly believe that there is a great value in hosting these stakeholder meetings. They provide an opportunity to share information and collaborate with one another. We really all have the same objectives in mind, and we strive to provide great customer service in our responsibilities for regulatory oversight as your approval authority in the great state of Texas. So that is ultimately why we like to use this meeting time to share information and hear comments and concerns from our stakeholders that might be impacting our control authorities in an open dialogue forum. So we can hear from you guys. And then with all that being said, we'll go ahead and we can jump right into our first agenda topic and get some updates since the last stakeholder meeting. Okay. So we really wanted to start this meeting off on a high note, and I'm very pleased to be able to provide an update on the status of our program modification backlog initiative. So this initiative was started a little over 2 years ago, back in September of 2019, when we had over 65 program modifications pending review and approval. So that's almost a program modification for every approved pretreatment program. But as you can see on the bar graph, so in January of 2020, we had made some headway, but we still had a long way to go, with less than 10 modifications technically completed and close to 45 pending our review. So in addition to the sheer magnitude, the majority of these program modifications were submitted more than a few years ago. And with a team of all new staff members, we essentially had to start our reviews from scratch in order to put these pieces, put the pieces together and complete our understanding. So it was a big challenge that we had, and I'm happy to report that we rose to that challenge. And as a result of all of our hard work over these last 2 years, we have approved or deemed technically complete over 90% of our universe of pending program modifications. And as you can see on the January 2022 bar graph, we have now technically completed or approved 60 backlogged program modifications. And we are currently in the review stages with 5 of the 6 remaining modifications. So we've come a long way. We've done a lot of work on these backlog modifications, and the plan that we have in place is to finish the review and approval of all of our pending mods and then shift gears to the new developing programs within this next year. So we really appreciate everyone working with us to accomplish this tremendous task. We know in some cases these modifications had pending for quite some time, and when we reached out, everyone was more than willing to work with us to get these modifications to a point of technical completion. So we're really happy with where we stand on this initiative. If you have submitted a program modification to us and you haven't heard from us about it at this point, I hope that is not the case, and I don't think it is. But if for some reason that seems to be the case for your program, please contact me so we can discuss the status of your review. And I will be dropping my contact information in the chat throughout the meeting. So you will have my direct line of contact so you can reach out to me directly. But on that note, are there any questions on the progress that we have made in our backlog initiative or anything to do with our program modification backlog initiative? Okay, well, I'm not hearing any questions. I'm not seeing any hands, and I'm not seeing anything pop in the chat. So if you do think of something relevant that you would like to ask, please feel free to hold on to it if you think of something, and we can address it at the Q&A session at the end of the meeting. Okay, so moving on. We are going to move into an update on our TIPD's permit, influent and effluent testing requirements for pretreatment programs. So this is something that we have presented on in past stakeholder meetings. And as you know, through the issuance of our TIPDs permit, the TCEQ requires approved pretreatment programs to conduct regular influent and effluent testing. So since the last stakeholders meeting, we have heard from both sides on the matter, those who are supporters of our current influent effluent testing requirements, and those who would like to see this requirement revised. And all of the feedback that we received was very informative and beneficial, and we took everyone's comments into considerations. And as the approval authority for all approved pretreatment programs throughout the state of Texas, we have historically required this regular influent effluent testing as a result of the requirements detailed in our memorandum of agreement with EPA. So we utilize EPA Region 6 guidance to develop a process that has been consistently implemented, and our influent and effluent monitoring practices in Texas have been successful. Texas uses the collected analytical data to protect publicly owned treatment works and their receiving water bodies, and we value this data. Our current influent and effluent practices are proactive and protective of the environment and human health, and therefore we will maintain the status quo, at least for now. But if you have any specific questions or concerns regarding how our current testing requirements impact your individual pretreatment program, please feel free to reach out to me. And if there are any additional questions or comments regarding these testing requirements, we'll be happy to discuss that now.
Colleen, Chris Posh has his hand raised. Chris, would you like to speak?
Yes, Colleen, you say it's the priority pollutant scans are proactive. Can you explain that?
That how the priority pollutant scans are proactive? Yes.
I mean, there's the implication active that there's a response to the data. I'm telling you know that I have talked to quite a few utilities. We have looked at quite a bit of data. I have not found any data that required action. So how do you guys come to the conclusion that it's proactive?
Okay. Well, you know, we like having this data. You know, it provides a historical and background data on both the characteristics of the wastewater entering the POTW and the removal efficiency of the treatment system that can be used in TBLL redevelopments. It also, the data provides documentation of compliance with general prohibitions and specific prohibitions of the National Pretreatment Program. Pretreatment team, anything else you'd like to add?
I'm sorry, Chris, are you saying the scans aren't proactive, or like our review process isn't proactive?
Well, the comment was the data are proactive, and I'm not quite sure, having looked at the data myself. For statewide, we looked at a ton of pretreatment data for Texas, and we didn't find anything that was actionable. My conclusion is that it's outdated, that program is outdated for many programs. It may be suitable and probably is suitable for some programs, but this is primarily a priority pollutants list that was created in the 80s, I believe. The priority pollutant, then that list has not been added, modified since. It includes pesticides that are not manufactured anymore, haven't been manufactured for a lot of time. So in order to be proactive, shouldn't it be the pretreatment program? Shouldn't the pretreatment programs be given the option of making this a better, investing that expensive monitoring rather than monitoring dollars, investing these dollars into chemicals that we may suspect are present but don't know? and a lot of these programs here know, based on 20 years of data, that most of the parameters are not detected, and they can look at the history and then make, hey, these parameters are not detected. Maybe I analyze for something else that I may or may not suspect to be, that may or may not be there, but I suspect it could be there. So for you guys to say no, this is the way it is. It's rather disconcerting because we just saying we like the data. That is where's the value?
Okay. Yeah, we hear you, Chris. You know, 40 CFR Part 122 Appendix D does require the testing for those priority pollutants. And, you know, a comment that you made that, you know, you can prove using data that historically some of these pollutants haven't been in the waste stream, but that, you know, the past doesn't dictate the future. You know, there may be something going on in your service area that you don't know about that this data will be able to identify for you.
Absolutely. So if I analyze for pesticides and I know they're not manufactured or used or sold in the US anymore, I have a high certainty that that is not going to be there. But you're right, there are activities that may happen in the service area. It's likely, it's very likely a chemical that's not on the priority pollutant list. So I'm saying, in order to protect the pretreatment, to protect the POTW, that's the goal. I agree, that's the goal. Let the local people dictate what should be done, rather than you dictating it. This is the right way for the whole state, for all programs. Give the options. If they don't want to do change, let them continue what is happening. But it is not a requirement in 40 CFR. There's quite a few states where it's not done that way. If you want to require it, maybe we change the frequency. But don't close the door on us.
Yeah, thank you. I appreciate you saying that and bringing that up and putting it on record. In regards to the pesticides, and I'm going to turn it over to Erica to provide a little bit of historical background on our stance on this. But regardless of if those pesticides are not used or manufactured in the U.S., EPA still has them listed as pollutants of concern. But Erica, did you have any additional insight that we could provide our stakeholders?
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you so much, Colleen. And you're absolutely right. You know, you did list that 40 CFR Part 122 Appendix D does list the priority pollutants that TCEQ does implement in our Influent effluent testing requirements. And we do this also for direct dischargers too in the permit actions when we review permits. So indirect, direct, this is the priority pollutants that EPA established. Also in Texas, we have Texas Surface Water Quality Standards that adds, don't quote me on this, approximately like 35 additional pollutants that we have identified are pollutants of concern for Texas. And so based off of 40 CFR Part 122, Appendix D, all of those tables, and the Texas Surface Water Quality Standards, our Influent and Effluent testing does consider all of those parameters, if you will. Now, when it comes, you know, it's really important that the only way that TCEQ can truly say for certain or meet our burden of proof, which we've been delegated by EPA to do, is, you know, we have to have analytical data that states that pollutants are not in detectable quantities in that sample or, you know, at that time. Without having that analytical data that says, hey, this parameter is not detectable, how can we say for sure that something is not present? So, we at TCEQ are upholding the requirements that are listed in the federal regulations as well as our state rules with our influent effluent testing. And we have we're following the goals and objectives of the National Pretreatment Program by making this influent effluent testing frequent and periodic and repeated, because the pretreatment program is set up to be proactive, not reactive. And so, that's just additional insight. And Colleen, I'll turn it back over to you. But again, thank you so much for your comments, Chris. We appreciate having this discussion with you. Colleen, were there any other questions or comments in the chat on this particular item?
I was just going to check. Let's see. Mr. Berry said, it seems to me that we should be making comments to EPA to update 40 CFR 122. Noted.
Yes, thank you, Steve. And so, Colleen, I guess since we don't hear any more questions or comments, I don't see any more hands raised, we can move on to the next agenda item if you'd like.
Okay, great. So I'm going to hand it over to Bridget to give us an update on where we stand with the dental amalgam rule.
Hello, everyone. So yeah, our next update is just about the EPA dental amalgam rule. So as we all know, during the last pretreatment stakeholder meeting back in January 2020, we had presented a draft FAQ for all of the CAs regarding the new rule. We revised the draft and posted the final document on the website. At that point, we had included any additional comments and concerns that had been submitted to us. At this point in time, all the CAs should have submitted to the TCEQ their one-time compliance report form as a modification to their program. Any additional new forms or documents that are created by a program for implementation of the dental rule or any other parts of the program should be submitted to us as a program modification. CAs may choose to enforce against dental dischargers if they want to. In those instances, the CAs obviously should make sure you have the correct legal authority, appropriate procedures, and other documentation incorporated into their approved program. However, at this time, we are not requiring that CAs have the ability to enforce their dental dischargers. But again, if you have any questions about this, please feel free to reach out to anyone on the team, or if you have any issues or questions regarding the submittal of the one-time compliance report form, or just the implementation of the dental rule in general, please feel free to reach out to us as well. At this point, do we have any questions from y'all about the dental rule? I'm not seeing anything in the chat. I'll give it a couple more seconds. All right. Again, if you have any other questions, feel free to ask them at the end during our open Q&A. So moving on to our next pretreatment update, I'll go ahead and address the pre-application meetings for program modifications. So starting last year, January 1st, 2021, the TCEQ pretreatment team started requiring mandatory pre-application meetings on all non-substantial and substantial program modification submissions. So this new process was established basically to ensure that all of the appropriate information is included in the modification submission, and it opens up the door, for open communication to allow us for more timely and efficient reviews. The pre-application meetings we have had so far have been very successful in starting the review process off on a pretty good foot, and just kind of ensuring that the CA and the TCEQ are on the same page in regards to the submittal. So if you're anticipating submitting a program modification, please contact us. You can contact anyone on the team. We have a general website that we can drop in the chat box, but be sure you're setting up your pre-application meeting at least 2 weeks prior to the official submittal, so we can go ahead and get those meetings started and discussion about what will be submitted. Our general website, if you want to notify us about a pre-application meeting, is wqpreet@tceq.texas.gov. Let me know if I need to repeat that. And also we should have it, in the chat box or up on a slide as well. And I'll go ahead and open up the floor for any questions or comments about these pre-application meetings. I don't see any hands up or any comments. Again, if you think of something before the end of the meeting, feel free to ask it at the end.
Okay, great. Thank you, Bridget. And now we'll turn it over to Jessica to give us an update on EPA's PFAS final rule.
Hi, good afternoon, everyone. So I will be covering the updates on the revisions to EPA's PFAS final rule, as well as their 2021 PFAS roadmap. So EPA has issued the final PFAS rule, which became effective June 22nd of 2020. In this rule, they added 172 PFAS substances to the list of chemicals subject to reporting under Section 313 of the Emergency Planning and Community Right to Know Act, as well as Section 6607 of the Pollution Prevention Act. So facilities affected are those that either manufacture, process, or otherwise use any of the PFAS chemicals listed in the rule. And as well, EPA did add these chemicals to Section 313 list of toxic chemicals, otherwise known as the Toxic Release Inventory, the TRI database. In September 2021, EPA published the Effluent Guideline Limit, the ELG Preliminary Plan 15, as well as their multi-industry study that they conducted on PFAS discharges. These documents outlined the EPA's initiative on revising pretreatment standards to address the discharge of PFAS from facilities who manufacture them. Then, in October 2021, EPA released their PFAS roadmap, which established timelines and actions, whether that be data collection or rulemaking, on 9 industrial categories. And so I wanted to go over the EPA's approach as well. There's several steps that they're taking. The first is they are undertaking rulemaking to restrict PFAS discharges from industrial categories where they already have the data to do so. And that includes organic chemicals, plastics, and synthetic fibers, OCPSF category, as well as metal finishing and electroplating. EPA has said that their proposed rule is expected in summer of 2023 for OCPSF and summer 2024 for metal finishing and electroplating. They also plan to launch detailed studies on facilities where they have some preliminary data, but insufficient enough to propose any rulemaking changes at this time. And those include categories, the electrical and electrical components, textile mills, and landfills. EPA expects these studies to be completed by fall of 2022 to help inform a decision-making if they plan to make any changes to the rule by the end of 2022. EPA also plans to initiate data reviews for industrial categories where there's little to no information about PFAS discharges as it relates to wastewater. So those include leather tanning, finishing, plastic molding and forming, and paint formulating. EPA expects to complete those data reviews by winter of 2023 to again inform themselves whether there's enough data to initiate a potential rulemaking. And lastly, EPA will continue to monitor industrial categories where the phase out of PFAS is projected to be in 2024. So this is for categories that are supposed to cease using them. And this includes pulp, paper, and paperboard industries, as well as airports. The results of their monitoring and whether they're going to take any further regulatory action will be addressed in the final ELG Plan 15. So the final ELG Plan 15 is expected to be put out in fall of 2022, so later this year. So at this time, we just, in regards to PFAS, continue to urge control authorities and affected industrial industries to continue to ensure they're keeping up with any revisions to the categorical standards, as well as just making sure they're aware of any efforts that EPA is taking for their PFAS initiatives. That concludes just a general summary of the changes that EPA has provided to their PFAS rule. Do we have any questions or comments related to this item?
Bridget, Jessica, you have two questions coming in from, you have Julie Newgame was the first one to have her hand up.
Okay, go ahead, Julie.
Yeah, thank you. I was just looking for a quick summary of what you just discussed, and if TCEQ has that available on the website, or if you're able to just push that out as a link to the group.
Yeah, absolutely. Everything that I hit on was on their PFAS roadmap, so we can definitely include the link to the EPA roadmap that has all the information. That was in the summary basically that I gave, so we can put that in the chat, definitely.
Thank you so much.
And I think there was another hand up.
Yes, Julie Winchell.
Hi, this is Julie Winchell. On the PFAS, you said that organic chemical manufacturing, is it all categories or are there just specific? Because we do have some organic chemical manufacturers, but I'm not sure how that's going to play out to, is it specific to subcategories?
Right, that's a great question. I did not see any mention of subcategories, so that's definitely something we can look into and try to get an answer to you. Right now, they just mentioned the revision of the guidelines for, the entire OCPSF category, but it very well could be that it's only applicable to some categories or maybe all of them. So that's a great question. I'll make sure to note it, get back to you.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, if there are
so
no...
it does.
Sorry, I was just going to pass it over to you. Go ahead, Colleen.
Perfect. Thank you, Jessica. Thank you for that update. And as Jessica stated, EPA is in the preliminary stages of updates to the referenced ELGs right now. So the most important thing is to just make sure and keep updated on the regulations and announcements. And we will provide a link to EPA's PFAS roadmap in the chat. And that provides all of the information plus some, that Jessica went over. And then, as over the next few months, as we get closer to the final plan being released, we'll provide, the necessary updates as well. Okay, so moving on to our pending program modifications and new developing programs. I would like to provide a quick update on the TPD's permit action needed for technically complete substantial modifications. So now that we have been successful in essentially completing all pending program modification reviews, we are going through the process of incorporating the technically completed substantial modifications into CA's pretreatment programs via the TPD's permit action. So the pretreatment team will be in contact with control authorities regarding any questions on the incorporation of your recently approved substantial modification into the POTW's tracking or covered TPD's permit. And it is important to note that although initially only one TPD's permit within the approved program is modified to incorporate the new substantial modification, the modification becomes incorporated into the entire pretreatment program and across all covered wastewater treatment plants under that program. So just like everything else, if you have submitted a program modification to us and it's been technically completed and you haven't heard from us about it at this point, please contact me as soon as possible so we can discuss the status of your review. and the next steps that we need to take in the TIPD's permit action process. So are there anybody have any questions on the permit action process needed for technically completed substantial modifications? Okay, y'all are quiet this afternoon. We're getting through this agenda a little bit faster, or maybe everyone's just holding their questions and comments for the end. So I better not get ahead of myself. But I will pass the mic back to Jessica now to give us an update on our TBLL redevelopment.
Thank you, Colleen. So we are pleased to report to y'all that we have successfully processed all of the pending TBLL redevelopment submissions that were included as a part of our program modification backlog. So at this point, all pending TBLLs have either been declared technically complete or are currently under review by a staff member right now. The agency's review of TBLL redevelopment submissions is conducted using both of EPA's guidance, the local limit development guidance from June of 2004, as well as EPA's Region 6 TBLL development guidance from October 1993. We would like to also take this opportunity to clarify for control authorities that are recalculating their TBLLs for their POTW that TCEQ is requiring that all TBLL redevelopment submissions contain a minimum of 7 consecutive days of sampling for the influent, effluent, and domestic commercial background locations. TCEQ is obligated to make decisions on data that is accurate and representative of current conditions, and therefore it is programmatic policy that all TBLL redevelopment submissions shall include at a minimum a sampling event study of 7 consecutive days to calculate pollutant removal efficiencies. That concludes the general summary. Were there any questions or comments on the TBLL update? I don't know I don't know if there's multiple hands. I see Chris Posh. Chris, if you wanted to go ahead.
Yeah, the 7-day intensive study, it's clear in the guidance, the EPA guidance, and I believe in your own guidance, is intended for new programs. Better data can be collected or is being collected in the quarterly monitoring or more frequent monitoring. I understand it is your policy, but in 2004, EPA published a new guidance to update old guidance. Why are you reluctant to implement that new guidance? You refer to 1993 EPA Region 6 guidance. I talked to Region 6. They don't use that 1993 EPA Region 6 guidance anymore. So why is TCEQ insisting, it sounds like you're insisting, on doing a 7-day sampling effort when a new updated guidance clearly says you should not do that?
Thank you, Chris. Yes, and I know this has been a conversation that we have also had outside of this stakeholder meeting, but TCEQ has been implementing the TIPD's pretreatment program as it was instructed and expected when delegation was received from EPA in 1998. So we are still officially requiring that consecutive sampling for all redevelopments because our internal expectations and policies have not changed. However, we are looking into and researching these concerns about the redevelopment data requirements that you've brought up, and we will be reaching out and consulting with EPA and other Region 6 states to find out how they're implementing their state delegated programs in respect to TBLL redevelopment data requirements. So we will be reaching out to EPA to continue this conversation. We appreciate you bringing it up now. I will turn it over to Erica to provide any additional information, historical context on this.
Hey, yeah, Colleen, I think you said it all perfectly. I have nothing more to add other than, Chris, I appreciate you bringing this up, and, we will definitely be following up on this. I know this has been an interest for pretreatment programs since I was in Colleen's shoes, and so we're evaluating it more closely, but we will officially respond. But Chris, I would encourage you and any other program representative out there, please feel free to share your specific questions or concerns regarding this with Colleen so that we can consider it thoroughly during our evaluation of this particular programmatic requirement. So that's all that I wanted to say, Colleen.
Thank you for that input, Erica. Chris, did you have any additional comments?
No.
Okay. And thank you again for bringing this to our attention. It is definitely a conversation worth having. And this won't be the last that you hear of this from us. So thank you for bringing that up. Did we have any other questions about our TBLL redevelopments? Okay, so hearing none, Bridget, let's move on to the new developing programs.
All right, thanks, Colleen. Again, next up on our plate for the pretreatment team will be the new developing programs. So since we've successfully cleared the majority of the pending program modifications of the current approved programs, we are going to begin reviewing the new developing program submissions. So right now, there are currently a total of 8 developing program submissions that will need to be reviewed. So to ensure that we're looking at the most appropriate documents, pretreatment staff will again be reaching out to the developing program contacts to make sure we have the most updated documents for the program on file. So during the review, we're going to kind of implement a collaborative effort again, like we did with the streamlining, in which we will schedule Teams meetings or conference calls to go over discrepancies as they come up in real time. These joint working sessions have worked great for us, and it also helps to minimize any back and forth correspondence or any confusion, and also provides an opportunity for us to address any questions or concerns. So if a developing program is out there and would like to submit any updated program documents, please contact the pretreatment team for further discussion. And if you would like to know a status update as well, reach out to us. Are there any questions right now about the pending developing programs? I do not see any hands or any questions in the chat.
Okay, thank you, Bridget. And like Bridget said, we are about to switch gears and really start focusing on the review of these pending developing programs. Over the last several months, we have been finalizing our process in order to complete these technical reviews in full. So, if you wanted to reach out to us proactively before we reach out to you, that would be of great help. But no worries. If not, we will be reaching out to programs. The first step in picking these developing programs back up is making sure that we have the most up-to-date program documents so we can start the review on the right foot. So thank you, Bridget, for that update. And now I will turn it over to Dr. Erin Darling to provide some updates on our EPA Method update rule. Oh, Erin, you are muted.
Happens every time. Thank you.
Every time.
Thanks, Colleen. The Water Quality Division is currently in the process of implementing the 2017 EPA Methods Update Rule. Since our last meeting in January 2020, the TCEQ Methods Update Rule Work Group that is responsible for overseeing the implementation process of these method rule updates has done research into how all 50 states and U.S. territories are implementing the 2017 MUR. This research identified some states that are using a similar approach to Texas and some states that have more stringent requirements. The TCEQ uses the MALs in Appendix E of the IPs for TIPD's permit application, screening, and TIPD's permit reporting purposes. The influent and effluent testing conducted by approved pretreatment programs is included under the TIPD's permit reporting requirements. The TCEQ will ensure that the language included in Appendix E clearly states that the listed MALs are to be used for reporting pollutants at non-detectable concentrations. For example, prior to reporting a non-detectable result for an analyte, permittees should compare the non-detectable level to the approved MAL in Appendix E in order to ensure that the analytical method tested down to either the MAL or the daily average effluent limit, whichever is greater, for that analyte. Additionally, the work group has reviewed the monitoring data submitted with the annual pretreatment performance summaries from all of the approved pretreatment programs from 2018 through June 2021. For 81 pollutants with MALs that are proposed to decrease in Appendix E of the IPs, the work group investigated the MALs reported by every program that reported a result as non-detectable. The work group found that programs in Texas are reporting at or below the proposed MALs for 73 of these pollutants. The pretreatment team will implement the new MAL values concurrently and consistently with the rest of the Water Quality Division. And are there any questions or concerns regarding the Methods Update Rule at this time? I don't see any hands up. Does anyone else see any hands?
Nope, I'm not seeing any questions either, Erin. If anyone does think of any questions, oh, it looks like one just popped up. Is there a timeline of when the method update rule will be adopted?
Hi, Colleen, I can
Erin
jump
or
in this one.
okay.
Yeah, so thank you so much for that comment or that question, Denise. So as far as the timeline with the adoption of the implementation of the method update rule, that'll coincide with our pending IP revisions. And so we still have not put forth those IP revisions for public comments and, public participation as of yet. So that's when, the revised MALs and all of that will fully be implemented. So I hope that answers your question, Denise. Be on the lookout for more to come soon about the pending IP revisions, but we will definitely roll it out to coincide with that. Back to you, Colleen. I think we have another comment in the chat.
Great, thank you, Erica. Yes, Mr. Steve Berry asked, are CAs required to make sure their SIUs meet the new detection limits? That's a great question.
Yeah, so Colleen, I can take over this one as well if you'd like. And so, Steve, to answer your question, in order for, and Erin, correct me if I'm wrong, you played a key role on the MUR work group, and so keep me honest, okay, Erin? I'm be looking at you on the camera. In order for CAs to report any concentration to a non-detectable quantity, you have to test down to that MAL value. And so, depending on the text tox limits that are associated with your approved pretreatment program, that'll TBLL really defined that MAL based off of the way that we have it structured in the IP revisions. But the caveat, Steve, is whether or not you're reporting something as detectable or non-detectable. And so if CEAs out there wants to report a concentration to a non-detectable level, then you have to test down to that MAL or another sensitive, significantly sensitive. I'm chopping that all up, Erin. Erin, hop in, keep me honest.
Sufficiently sensitive.
Sufficiently, I knew it started with an S. Okay, sufficiently sensitive method. So Steve, that's the caveat for that. So I hope that answered your question, Steve, but if not, please let us know. I actually see you raised your hand. So Steve, feel free to come off mute and talk to us.
Okay, yeah, I'm specifically talking about my SIUs. Let's take an example, mercury. When I first issued these permits to my SIUs many years ago, we were using the we only had the method that detected down to 0.2 micrograms per liter for mercury. Do I need to change my permits to make my SIUs test for mercury down to the new, which is I think is something like 0.005 micrograms per liter? Do I need to assure that my SIUs are using that new test method to get the lower detection limits? I understand that I need to do that when I do my influent and effluent monitoring, and influent and effluent monitoring, and if I'm going to redevelop my technically based local limits, I have to use the new test methods with the lower detection limits. The question is, do my SIUs need to use those new test methods with the lower detection limits?
Yeah, so that's a great question, Steve. And thank you for clarifying that, by the way. And so honestly, it'll depend on if in the instance of mercury, which there are different levels of, MALs, depending on how low your receiving water body requires based off of the text tox limits. You would want to, well, if your permit for the SIUs explicitly states the MALs that need to be used, then in order for that SIU to say that, their discharge or the concentration in that sample has a non-detectable concentration, then they would need to test down to that MAL. Any analytical tests that don't go down to the associated MAL, then they would need to report that value as a hard value. That's the only caveat. The TCEQ is not requiring the use of certain analytical methods or all of that stuff. And Erin, keep me honest. It is just what defines something being detectable versus non-detectable. So Steve, did that kind of answer your question?
Not exactly. Now, my permits say they have to use test methods 40 CFR 136.
Okay, so your permits do specify a certain test method. Yes.
But, okay. 200.7 for metals is still in 40 CFR 136. Right. So yeah, they can use that. They don't have to go to 200.8. Correct?
So I don't want to say for sure, but I will say, Steve, we'll follow up with you on that. But I do want to say that for you in your particular instance, it'll be based off of the text tox menu and the text tox value. But we can look into your particular program and advise you better. So we'll follow up with you, Steve, on that, because I don't want to tell you wrong, but it will involve that level of an analysis. Like you'll want to refer to the text tox menu requirements and that kind of stuff. So let us look into that and then follow up with you for sure. Will that work?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
All right, Colleen, I'm gonna hand it back over to you, okay?
Okay, thank you, Erica. And Steve, I have made a note to look into that because that is a great question and good information for us to know too as we roll this method update rollout. Okay, it looks like Kristen has dropped a question in the chat. I'll read it now. So will the new IP draft be emailed for public comment I know we have had a lot of issues with our laboratories meeting some of the existing MALs for some pollutants. Additionally, I know the previous proposed MALs were not reasonable concentration levels. Instead, they were, okay, yeah, everybody, if you pull up the chat, you can see the example that she gives. This is not practical in developing calibration curves in the laboratory. Aaron, I'll turn it over to you if you have any initial thoughts. And Erica, do you know, will this IP go to public comment?
Yeah, so I can answer that for you, Colleen. So yes, there will be a public participation aspect for the IPs, and so so to answer that question, yes, that is the case, Colleen. Now, Kristen, I do want to let you know that I appreciate you submitting those comments. What we'll do is we're going to refer that back to the MUR work group because I know that we're still collaborating with them and we're still working with them on finalizing everything for the IP revisions. So we're making note of this comment and we'll refer it to the MUR work group for additional review and consideration, okay? But I just want to let you know that any official decisions or changes will be addressed in that way because we want to make sure that we work with the work group on that. But I appreciate you bringing your particular concerns to our attention. All right, back to you, Colleen.
Thank you, Erica. And Joseph Fielding in the chat asked that we please follow up with the group on the question regarding the MALs impacting the SIUs in your service area. So we will certainly do that. We hope to have regular stakeholder meetings throughout the year. So this is an issue, that we will be continuously updating you guys on. And I encourage, if you have any questions or, it's been a certain amount of time and you'd like an update, please feel free to always pick up the phone and give me a call, and I'm happy to chat with you about it. And, if I don't have an update at that time, I'm happy to go asking around and find the information that we need. But this method update rule is, still a work in progress. And, we will share these questions and concerns that we're hearing from you today, like Erica said, with the method update rule work group for further discussion and consideration. Okay, any final questions on the method update rule?
Hey, so Colleen, I do want to acknowledge the question that the question that Jennifer posed in the chat. And so Jennifer asked, are there going to be additional discussions with the MAL stakeholder group? Jennifer, let me look into that and I'll work with the MUR work group, but I do know that there are, concerns that laboratories and programs have regarding our implementation of the MUR. And so let me look into that and we will definitely correspond with the entire stakeholder group on any changes that will be. Okay.
Jeez, I haven't
I don't
figured
know
mine out yet.
It's from just this.
Okay. I don't know if someone was coming off mute to ask a question or anything, but Jennifer, I hope that I answered your question. If not, please feel free to type another question or let me know or come off mute and we can definitely talk. But we will be corresponding with the entire stakeholder group if we have additional meetings. And if you have any specific concerns or questions, please feel free to reach out to Colleen or myself or the MUR work group and we'll address it.
Great, thank you, Erica. We'll give it another minute for any last questions on the method update rule. Okay, well, that concludes our presentation and our agenda items. We have made it to the Q&A session of our meeting. So we're going to open the floor up to the stakeholders to ask any questions on items that we've covered and anything else that may be impacting your programs.
Colleen, you have a question from Kobe in the chat.
Okay, great. So in the event the wastewater sample has to be diluted, will the ND be accepted if the lab is utilizing the correct method that typically meets the MAL limits? Read that again. I'll ask Erin if she has any initial thoughts on this, but we may want to wait and get some feedback from the MUR work group before providing a final response. Colby. But Erin, did you have
Yes.
anything?
Yes, I think this is a question that the work group should consider.
And we will definitely pass along, like I said, we'll pass along these questions and concerns so they can be addressed.
Hi, Colleen, it's Bridget. I have a question for
Yes,
Colby,
Bridget.
actually.
Okay.
Are you saying that it's diluted, per the method, or you're diluting it to run a method on it? Just for clarification when we ask them. Hello?
Colby, if you could
Colby?
drop that.
Yeah, you can use your mic too if you want, but diluted to run the correct method. Okay, thank you.
Any other questions for us? I don't
Do you
want
have-
to cut
do you have a
anybody
plan?
short. Oh,
Do you have a plan for
yes.
something planned for the agenda for the next meeting?
Do we have the planned agenda for our next
Oh,
meeting? Was that your question?
Yeah, I'm not expecting that you have a complete agenda for the next meeting, but I wonder whether you have already something that is on the radar for your next meeting.
We don't yet. We haven't. We were just trying to make it through this one first, Chris. I'm going to be honest. But yes, like I said, we do want to keep these meetings regular. So I'll work with Matthew and Erica so we can go ahead and get something on the books. And we can let our stakeholders know, and everyone can be, prepared to come with their questions. But yes,
Yeah.
well, that's definitely.
One item that rather than having it this one-way communication, maybe you will invite somebody from the pretreatment community to take one of the agenda items and have the stakeholders be more active within that stakeholder group.
I appreciate that suggestion. Yeah, that you may be onto something there, Chris. So we'll definitely keep that in mind when we're preparing the next meeting. Thank you for that. Anybody else have any, if you don't have any questions, any comments or suggestions?
Colleen, Colleen, you have Heather has her hand raised.
Okay, great. Heather, please go ahead with your question.
Hi, Colleen. Hi, everybody. I just wanted to first of all say thank you guys for starting these back up. I really appreciate it. They're informative, and it's been tough the last couple of years, I know. And I would like to suggest that if possible, at least as soon as possible, we return to having these in person. Like it's easier for all of us to communicate together when we're together in a room. And I know that the trade fair looks like it may be going on in April, so I'm hoping that means that TCEQ is amenable to start moving back to in-person meetings. And I also wanted to, Colleen, if it's okay, I think we discussed previously mentioning to folks that Region 6 Pretreatment Association will be having its in-person workshop in August in Denton. So just
did you save the email
on your radar and start getting your budgets ready.
client correspondence?
That's all my comments.
Okay, great. Thank you,
Client's
Heather.
correspondence
Yes.
folder under the CLCs.
Oh.
For every month, there's a client's correspondence.
Oh, Juan, I think could you mute your mic, please? Thank you. Thank you, Heather. You know, I appreciate the feedback, and we're, you know, glad to get these meetings started again. We do hope to go back to in-person sooner rather than later. So that's something else that we're working on the logistics of as well. But in the meantime, like you said, it's been a hard, you know, couple of years. We wanted to at least get this virtual meeting in the book. So we had the opportunity to, you know, share some information and hear from you guys. But yes, that's definitely the goal, to get back in person as soon as we can. And yes, thank you for mentioning the Region 6 workshop that's coming up. We do have the Region 6 Pretreatment Association annual workshop that's coming up in August. That will be in Denton. So we will be, stakeholders should be expecting an email notification coming out within the next month or so, and that'll include some additional information. Go into these workshops, and trade fairs are a great way to, you know, network with our, you know, the other fellow pre-treatment professionals who understand the challenges that we go through on a daily basis. And it's also a great way to stay up to date on, you know, current regulations, like what's going on with PFAS and that sort of thing. So thank you, Heather, for bringing that up. And Maria, if you wouldn't mind clicking to the next slide. I also wanted to give everybody a heads up that yes, TCEQ will be having its environmental trade fair and conference, and that will be in May here in Austin. So we're looking forward to those two events. They should be good networking opportunities, and hopefully before too long, we'll be able to have these meetings in person again.
Colleen, let me hop on really quick and just say that we are having in-person meetings upon request. And so if anyone does want to meet in person, TCEQ is open to the public. We hesitated to have an in-person stakeholder meeting because how many? There were like at some point 88 people on the meeting today. And so, or at least 88 people. And so Heather, we just didn't want to pack everyone on TCEQ campus in maybe the agenda, the commissioner's agenda room. I know that's where we've had previous stakeholder meetings, but we thought this virtual format would be better. But just for the record, we are having in-person meetings, just not for groups this large at this time. But we look forward to being able to do that again really soon, Lord willing. So I wanted to say that, Colleen.
Thank you, Erica. Thank you for that clarification.
Hey, Colleen, it's Bridget. We do have a couple of chat questions. Okay. One of them, Joseph asked if for the new developing program submittals, is there a timeline? And also when we ask them to submit updated documents, is that a polite way of saying the submittals are missing? That's more of the submittals are, you know, older. So we want updated documents if things have changed. As far as the timeline, I'm not too sure on that. You know, as we're finishing up, you know, a couple of items, but they are on our radar for this year. As far as Brian, he asked if CAs are required to submit program modifications for the dental amalgam rule. Yes, we do require any sort of update to forms or documents in your program that you will be using to implement. They do need to come to us as a non-substantial modification. I know a lot of you were using that EPA form. That is one that also needs to come to us for a non-substantial modification. So yes, anything you're planning on updating a form, adding a new form, yes, we do require that notification, Brian.
Thank you for that, Bridget. And to backtrack just a little bit about the new developing programs, Joseph, yeah, like Bridget said, it's more we want to make sure we have the most updated documents. Some of these developing programs have been sitting for a little while now, so we don't want to put a lot of work into getting these reviews completed if there's going to be some updated information that we need to take into account. So we just want to make sure that we have everything we need to start the technical reviews of these programs off on the right foot. And so we don't waste any more time getting them reviewed and approved. So timeline speaking, yeah, we hope to be making that transition to reviewing these new developing programs sooner rather than later. So my hope and goal is that someone on the team should be reaching out to these programs within the next couple of months. So as you know, sometimes it's hard to it's hard to predict these things with pre-treatment, as we all know, but that is our goal. Any other questions?
Hey, Colleen, while we're waiting on people to possibly provide more questions or comments, I do want to acknowledge some of the previous comments about the agenda topics. So I do want to reiterate what you said earlier about how, the agenda topics for the next stakeholder meeting are not defined yet, but there are some action items that TCEQ will be following up on and reporting back. For instance, like the Influent, Effluent testing, we will be following up on that. We will also be following up as requested based off of that permit language and, the MUR implementation. And we will be referring some of the comments that we received to the MUR work group for their consideration and evaluation as we move forward with the IP revisions and the MUR implementation. But Colleen, I do want to comment to Chris Posh or anyone else out there, Heather, who mentioned that having some agenda items or interaction, please feel free to submit your proposed topics or anything that you'd like to present on or discuss with us. Submit them to Colleen because, we really wanted this to be interactive. And so I hope that you all enjoyed talking with us as much as we've enjoyed talking with you. But we definitely want this to be an opportunity for us to have a dialogue and discussion. So if there are any agenda topics that weren't included or discussed today or previously that you would like for us to talk about collectively, or you would like to present to us on, please list that and provide that information to Colleen. And if you do that, we definitely want to make that happen. So I just wanted to say that briefly, Colleen.
Absolutely. Thank you, Erica.
There is a question in the comment box.
Thank you, Joseph, for your question. I'll just read it out loud. Will streamlining modifications be incorporated with the next permit, or will they be issued as a permit modification when deemed technically complete? So that's going to be dependent on each particular program, really. And we're happy to work with programs individually to determine the best process, but we will either be incorporating the technically complete substantial modification either through an in-house permit and dovetail that program modification with the in-house permit renewal, or we will do what we call a staff initiated amendment, and we will update, we will open up the permit and update it that way. So those are the two options that we're using right now to incorporate these substantial modifications into the TIPTES permits. I hope that answered your question, Joseph. Any final comments, questions, concerns, suggestions that you would like to share with us this afternoon? Okay, if there are no other questions, this will conclude our meeting. I did want to turn it over to Robert or Erica for any last parting words.
Yeah, thank you so much, Colleen. Robert might have been pulled off to another call, but this has been a fun meeting. Thank you so much, Colleen, for moderating, and for Bridget, Jessica, and Aaron for presenting, and then Maria, you did awesome with presenting the presentation. But we've really enjoyed spending this time with you all. Please feel free to reach out to Colleen if you have any questions or concerns, or if we can be of any additional assistance before our next stakeholder meeting. The goal is to re-implement having these quarterly. So be on the lookout for another meeting invite to be coming out to you all soon. Feel free to reach out to us if we can be of any assistance or support. And thank you all so much for your time today. We hope you have a wonderful rest of the week.
Thank you, Erica. I was going to say, Bridget, you were probably saying this too. If you haven't yet, please go ahead and make sure and follow the link to record your attendance on this meeting, so we know that you are here. Thank you, everybody. Have a great day.